Hey guys, welcome to the 10th Autodesk Inventor tutorial, and in this tutorial we're going to continue looking at constraints. So the first constraint that we're going to be looking at in this tutorial is the horizontal constraint. And the horizontal constraint will basically just force a line to be perfectly horizontal. So we're just going to go ahead right here and draw a line. Doesn't matter the angle of this line, but when we apply that horizontal constraint, it will just force that line to be perfectly horizontal. So we're just going to go ahead right here and select that horizontal constraint. As soon as we do so, we're just going to want to click on the line that we want to force to be horizontal. So we're just going to want to click on this line right here, and like I said, as soon as we do so, we can see that it changed that line. So now that line is perfectly horizontal. And since it's constrained to be perfectly horizontal, there's nothing that we can do to change it. So if we were to try and change the angle of this line right here, you can see that it won't let us. It will only allow us to move this line. So we can't do anything to change the fact that this line is horizontal. Alright, so the next constraint that we're going to be looking at is the vertical constraint. And the vertical constraint will basically just force a line to be perfectly vertical. So we're just going to go ahead right here and draw another line. And again, it doesn't matter the angle of this line, but when we apply that vertical constraint, it's just going to change this line so that it will be vertical. So we're just going to go up here and select that vertical constraint. And now we're just going to want to go ahead and click on the line that we want to keep perfectly vertical. So we're just going to want to click on this line right here. And yep, as soon as we do so, we can see that it changed that line. So now it is perfectly vertical. And since it's constrained, we cannot change the angle of this line since it's constrained to be vertical. Alright, so since this line is constrained to be vertical, and there is nothing that we can do to change the fact that it's vertical, what would happen if we applied the horizontal constraint to it? And it will basically just throw an error. It'll say that adding this constraint will over-constrain the sketch. And that basically just means that you have two constraints that are conflicting. And if we just go ahead right here and show all of our constraints, we can see that, yep, we have that vertical constraint right there. So the vertical constraint and that horizontal constraint that we were trying to apply were conflicting. So in order to make this line horizontal now, we're going to have to remove this constraint. And remember, you can't click the X, that will just hide it. You're actually going to have to right click on it and click delete. So now that constraint is gone. So now if we want to apply the horizontal constraint to this line, we can go ahead and do so and we won't get an error. So we're just going to go ahead and select that horizontal constraint and then select that line. Yep, as you can see, it just changed that line to make it perfectly horizontal without any errors. And if we go and show all constraints again, we can see that, yep, now that horizontal constraint is right there. And obviously we cannot apply the vertical constraint or we're going to get the same error as we did before for the exact same reason. Alright, and one more thing before I end this tutorial that you have to be careful of is automatic constraints. And when you're drawing a line, you may have noticed these things that pop up. And when I'm drawing this line right here, you can see that it is perfectly vertical. And as you can see right off to the right of where I'm drawing, you see that vertical constraint right there. And that basically just means if I were to draw this line the way it is, it will be perfectly vertical. And not only is it perfectly vertical, the vertical constraint is applied to this line. So if we go ahead right here and show all constraints, we can see that, yep, that vertical constraint is applied right there. So if we try to apply that horizontal constraint, we're going to get an error. So this is just something you have to be careful of when you're drawing lines. If you don't want a line to be perfectly vertical all the time, just make sure that you go ahead and remove that constraint after you've drawn the line. Alright, so that's pretty much it for this tutorial on constraints. In the next tutorial, we're going to continue on with constraints and learn a few more. Alright, so see you guys.